Today we're going to rank all of my Natasha Denona palettes. Now I have 8 in total, and I did just finish a little series on my channel where I did 8 days of Natasha Denona, and I did a different look each day with one of those 8 eyeshadow palettes. So I'll link that playlist down below for you if you're looking for some inspo and looks on how you can use these palettes. But today I'm going to rank them all. So if you've seen my Pat McGrath rankings before, then you know how this is going to go. We're going to switch to the desk format and we're going to do swatches. I'm going to talk about why I rank the palettes in certain positions, my favorite shades, the formulas, all of the things that you might need to know when considering purchasing one of her palettes. Now I don't have all of them. I do only have the 8. I say only, like that's more than anyone needs, but you know, there's a lot of her palettes. And I am slowly adding like palettes of hers to my collection, but it's definitely a slower process for her than it was for Pat McGrath for me anyway. But yeah, so we're gonna move into the desk format and do all of that. Hopefully that all sounds interesting to you though. Now, if it does, let's go ahead and do the YouTubey things. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's go to the desk format and see where all these palettes fall in the ranking, shall we? Okay, so 8 Natasha Denona palettes to rank. Just a couple of things. One, I didn't have time to do my nails. I'm sorry, they don't look great. I apologize, but it is what it is. It's a makeup channel, not a nail channel. And also I just swatched all of these palettes, so my hands probably look a little like pigmented, etc. That's because I just did all the swatches. Now I normally rank my palettes based on how much use I personally get out of them on the everyday, because you know, it's all well and good to have these colorful, extravagant glam looks for YouTube and Instagram, etc. But the average person wearing makeup, including myself on the everyday, is probably a lot more toned down. So I really do base my rankings based off of like how much actual practical use will I get out of this palette. Especially if I am recommending a palette, I really do want to recommend it based on like, I think you'll get your money's worth, because they are expensive. I also base it off of the actual quality of the eyeshadow on the palette, and also just a personal preference of like, this is kind of my kind of color story or my jam, etc. And just keep that in mind. This is all my personal opinion. We can have different opinions and preferences, etc. That is literally what makes us human. So yeah, just remember this is all opinion based. It's my little channel here, that's why. And then if you've seen my Pat McGrath rankings before, you know that I go through, I talk about the palette, I show some of the shades that I love, etc. I also like to put up pictures of, you know, looks I've done with the palettes if I have them, and then I also include swatches of the palette as well for every single one. So that's pretty much all of the housekeeping. Now let's get into number 8. If you have been a long-time subscriber, you will 100% know exactly which palette is in number 8, and it is the Lila palette. The Lila palette is actually the first ever Natasha Denona palette I personally tried. It was the second release from After the Sunrise palette of like this kind of size, and as soon as I saw the color story, I was 100% in. I was like, yeah, this is it. And it was a big purchase because it was $129. So I think at the time the exchange rate was even worse than what it is now. I think off the top of my head, it was like $230 this palette. So way more than even a Pat McGrath palette is. Now I do like the packaging itself actually. I do prefer her newer packaging, but I don't mind this. It is something a little bit different. And the other thing that I liked about it, so you've got your mirror in here, is that it is so flexible that you can bend the palette back here and kind of get rid of the mirror if you wish. So I do quite like that. I also don't mind the size of this palette. I definitely prefer the midi size palettes. They, for some reason to me, are just like the perfect eyeshadow palette size, whereas this one is a little bit too large. The other thing to note about Natasha Denona palettes, which I do think is really cool, and I don't do it with my palettes just because of YouTube. I want them to remain in the color, like their correct color story, but you can remove every single one of her eyeshadow pans. And actually one of you left a comment on my Pastel video review, I'm pretty sure it was, and it was such a great like comment and kind of suggestion, especially for those of you that might have a few, is that they kind of look at their Natasha Denona palettes as a giant collection of single eyeshadows that they can mix and match to create their ideal palettes at the time. And I thought that was actually such a great way of looking at it, because all of the pans do like remove from there. You really can create like your ideal palettes from her like singles. So I thought that was a really good suggestion. The color story of Lila itself is amazing. It is so beautiful. Like this color, the purples, and the fact that they're different tones of purples, the hot pinks, this kind of like duochrome shade, and then you've got the cool tony kind of purple and pinks, etc., the mattes. Everything about this palette to me just was phenomenal, and I still to this day love this color story. I think it is gorgeous. This palette and I have, we've had a lot of words over the years. So I think, what is this palette, like 4 years old? I can't remember when this came out. I feel like it's 4 or 5 years old. Whenever this palette very first came out, that's when I picked it up, and we have had some arguments over our time. I have a feeling that my particular eyeshadow palette here is just off in some way, or I got a different formula, because I do know that a lot of people do really, really like this formula. Or this palette, I should say, but this palette from day one for me has just not performed at all. I can absolutely get it to perform a lot better now because I am more experienced at eyeshadow. I kind of know how to finesse it to get it to work for me. But back in the day, especially when I was like a beginner to makeup, oh my lord, this just did not perform. But even when I compare it now with my experience levels to her other palette, it's still just, the formula does not compare. The mattes in here are really, really patchy, like extremely patchy to work with. And the metallics, some of them just will not really adhere or show up on the eye at all. And it has been, even though they swatch phenomenally, because when you see the swatches, this whole palette swatches incredibly, but actually on the eye, a lot of these don't perform very well. And when I first started with eyeshadow, I had no idea how to finesse an eyeshadow to really get it to work and look great for me no matter what the kind of formula. Whereas now I can, and you've kind of even seen if you watched like the day one of my 8 Days of Natasha Denona, the look I got was beautiful and it looked great. But I know now after 5 or 6 years of doing eyeshadow and social media, etc., and practicing how to really get the most out of these. There's not much to say about this one. It is number 8 because the quality really was never ever there from day dot for me, and then now it's discontinued, so I guess we don't really have to think about it. I wouldn't mind though if she did reformulate this with the retro glam formula and put it in a midi size. That would make me very happy, and I would definitely repurchase that. Number 7 I feel like will come as no surprise to any of you as well, and it is the Pastel palette. Now in terms of packaging, I mean mine's a bit grotty now because I've been using it so much, but I love this packaging. I love the mint purple pink pastel vibes. Like this whole palette, even when I saw this palette, oh my god, I was just obsessed. It's stunning. It is such a cool color story. Now it's definitely not everyday wearable. It's not for someone that, if you never ever wear a color, it's 100% not for you. But for me, I don't mind wearing, especially when I saw this, even though in my review, which I'll try and remember to link down below for you. In my review, I did sort of say, look, if you want to use more than just the one matte or cream to powder shadow in here, you're gonna need to really finesse it and be patient with it, and the average person really isn't gonna wanna do that on the everyday. And I kind of was frustrated by the end of working with this palette, if I'm honest. It really did kind of test my limits. But when I purchased this palette, I really did purchase it with the intention of one and dones and just using these one colors, because that's how I wear color on the everyday. Like on YouTube, I'll incorporate colors, etc. But in real life, I would put, say, this shade all over the lid, or this shade, or the blue shade here, etc. Like these are the kinds of shades that I would put all over the lid just as a one and done. So for me, I will get a bit of use out of this on the, like in my everyday life, as well as like obviously my channel, etc., because that is how I would wear it. So for me, it's not a waste of money or like useless, because that was kind of my intention when purchasing it. But like I said in the review, if you are someone that would say want to put this through the crease and then this on and then this one on and incorporate a heap of the shadows, definitely don't pick this up. Look for a better formula, because these really don't, they're hard to finesse altogether. The actual metallics in here though are so incredible. I love this Mint Frost shade more than anything. I seriously love that shade. If you've been around here, you know I love a green. This yellow is like amazing on the inner corner. It's really become a favorite. Even this red, like, is so pretty. It's so pretty. And so I really do appreciate the metallics and their kind of uniqueness in this particular palette. But again, if you're not going to wear them, it's definitely not worth it for you. I did see someone say that a couple of these shades were in the Tropic palette. I never picked up the Tropic palette, but it does explain to me a little bit more why I also wanted this particular palette, because I wanted the Tropic palette so much, but so many people gave it such bad reviews that I couldn't justify spending that much money on a palette when it was getting such bad reviews. But this one, being that it is a midi price and it has all of the other shades in it, for me, it's a win-win. The cream to powders in this particular palette as well, just keep in mind, these are not the normal cream to powders. I got really excited when I found out that these were cream. I mean, look how cool those shades are though, seriously. I got really excited when I found out that these were cream to powders, because I actually thought it would make the pastels work really well. Like one of the reasons why I was quite confident in picking this palette up was because there was so many cream to powders, and her cream to powder formula in her other palettes are some of my favorite formulas and shades. And I know not everyone loves them, but for me, I really enjoy using them. But these are not the same. They're a bit different. They have a lot more fallout to them than her other cream to powders, and they just not as pigmented and opaque as what her other cream to powder formulas are, or shadows are in her collections as well. So I was disappointed. And if you go into this like me, loving the cream to powder formula and expecting it to really pay off like her others, you're not going to get that. But still, I mean, they are still workable and very pretty, like I said, especially if you want that one and done kind of look. Moving on to number 6. Now number 6, we have the Triochrome palette. Now I should mention as well that over the years, Natasha has migrated to this more plastic hard packaging, which, like I said, I do prefer. And then you also have the holes to pop out the palettes on the pans on the inside as well. I like this because one, it's a little bit more durable for when you travel, etc. And two, it's easier to clean, and I like the whole aesthetic of it. I don't know why, I just prefer it. But this is the Triochrome palette itself. Now, I never plan on picking this palette up again. I think it's limited edition, so if it is something that you really want, I would pick it up sooner rather than later, because I do think this one's on the outs. This became on sale at Sephora Australia for 50% off. And that's the reason why I picked this up. Actually, my fiance bought it for me for Christmas, but I might have, nudged him along that this was a good idea. But I wouldn't have picked this palette up, if I'm completely honest with you, if it wasn't on sale for the 50% off, just because I knew I wouldn't get a whole lot of everyday use out of it. It was a bit of a frivolous spend for me, but I love the palette itself. I really do. So number 7 and 8, honestly, I could really, if I had to, I could give those palettes up, but everything from now on, I really do treasure in my collection, and you'll pry it from my cold den hands, you hear? The Triochrome palette, to be honest with you, actually kind of struck a little chord in my heart from the get-go when I saw this palette, because there's some shades in here that just absolutely scream teens. Do you know what I mean? They just scream my name. And obviously it's this whole first row, because if you've been around here before, you know I love green more than anything. I just love green eyeshadows for some reason. So this whole row, I was like, yes, that's 100% for me. I love a mustard shade. So this little bad boy right here, calling my name, and I love a lavender pastel shade as well. Now, I do love all of the other shadows in this palette as well, but they were the ones that just, like, as soon as I saw them, just drew me straight in. The reason why this one is ranked a little bit lower is because even though these are very pretty triochromes, which they don't really kind of pick up on camera. And to be honest, I don't see the trio. I only ever get a duo. I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous, but you know, I never see a trio color in here. I only ever see 2 colors. Anyway, that's a side note. Even though they are very, very, very beautiful shadows, I don't know, I don't love purplish triochromes or duochromes, if I'm honest, especially because this one is like the duochrome or triochrome, whatever you want to call it, in the Divine Rose 2 palette. So I already owned this shadow. And then this one, I mean, it's very pretty, but it's just, this kind of a purple metallic isn't something I'm going to wear on the everyday. Now I do love this one. I wear this one quite a lot, but they're kind of the only metallics in here. And even though I love all of these mattes, I find myself not reaching for this palette as much because it only has the 3 metallics and 2 of them I don't love. So I find that I kind of keep creating the same look over and over again because I keep using this shade. I mean, obviously I just need to remind myself that I can incorporate other palettes in my collection to use with the mattes, and that would really make me get a lot of use out of this. But yeah, I just forget to reach for it as often as I want to because of it only having the 3 metallics and me not loving. Like, I mean, these are beautiful and great quality. I just don't, they're just not colors I prefer to wear on the everyday. However, the mattes in here are really stunning. I will say if you're looking to use this mint, which, I mean, don't you just wish that this would transfer so easily to your eye with this color because it's magical. It really is like the pastel palette where you kind of, you're just gonna get the softest of soft watercolor wash over your lid. Don't expect this to be opaque. But I will say though, these 2 greens right here, very opaque, very blendable, very, very good quality. I mean, all of the mattes are, but you wouldn't expect these to be such like opaque colors on your lid, and they truly are. Overall, I think if you were looking at this palette, I would just be thinking about how much color you wear on the everyday, how confident you feel in wearing color on the everyday, and if that's a yes, then for sure go ahead and pick this up. Number 5 is also a newer Natasha Denona palette to my collection, and I kind of never was gonna get it, and then I don't know why, I just all of a sudden was like, I really, really, really want that palette. So number 5 is the Bronze palette. Now again, one of her midi size palettes, which is a great size. Now this one has that metallic kind of packaging, so it's very fingerprinty. I do happen to prefer this type of one because it's not as fingerprinty, but that's a very small note. Has the little holes on the back as well so that you can take the singles out, etc. Now this is the palette itself. Now when you look at this palette, one, if you are not a warm toned leaning person for your makeup, don't even look at it. Don't even question it. Don't even half think about it. Because if you don't love warm tones, you will not like this palette in any way, shape or form. Every single shade here is very, very warm leaning. And I will also say, if you don't like as much like what the name suggests, bronze makeup looks, or even those like orangey slight makeup looks, again, don't even bother, because this palette, while it has a lot of dimension when you look at it, like, or you feel like there's a lot of different shades when you look at it here, a lot of these shades look very, very similar on the lids. So I have done a couple of videos creating looks from this palette now, and I use this actually a lot in my everyday life, and all of the looks that I've kind of created with it are very, 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 very similar with some nuances to them. The kind of person that is really going to absolutely love this palette is someone who, one, obviously loves warm tones, and especially these like orangey kind of bronzy warm tones, but two, someone who just wants to be able to pick up any single shade in an eyeshadow palette, put it on their eye with other combinations in the same eyeshadow palette, and know that it looks good without even thinking about it. So if you're someone that doesn't really know what colors go well together, or you just honestly don't even want to think about putting your makeup on that hard, you just want to slap it kind of on your eye and know when you walk out the door it's going to look very cohesive and beautiful, then this is the kind of palette for you. Because most of the looks in here, there's not really a shadow in here that you can't combine that is going to look bad on you. It's all going to look really, really beautiful together because they're all so similar in a way that it honestly would not matter. Every single one of these shades will go really well together. So if you're not someone that can pick colors very well, you don't kind of know what colors go with what colors, then this is the palette for you for sure. The quality of this palette itself is really, really, really beautiful. I do think that the Retro and the Glam palettes are definitely a step up in formula again. I think that while this is exceptionally great quality, I do think that the Retro and Glam palettes are even further better quality than this one, which is saying something because this one is quite beautiful. I picked up this palette for this stunning purple shade right here. I don't even know what you call that, eggplanty, purpley goodness, but it called my name every time I looked at this palette, and it was the reason why I picked it up, and it's gorgeous. The first look that I did with this palette, it was like a get ready with me where I tried this for the first time. That look made me feel, I mean, there should be a picture of it somewhere on the screen, hopefully, but that look just made me feel so gorgeous. I really felt pretty in that makeup look, and it was so easy to create. And then you have this kind of pink, which is like a, I don't think it's a duochrome, but it's definitely a pink with a gold fleck through it. Kind of reminds me of NARS Orgasm in an eyeshadow. It's so, so gorgeous. And then the other thing that I do love about it is you do have these kind of chocolatey, kind of bronzy colors, which they look so good on the everyday, and you can really just throw any one of those mattes through the crease and put one of those on the lid and it looks so good. I will say there's a couple of bronzy shadows in here that you really can't tell the difference when you put them on the eye. They really do kind of tend to look pretty similar. It really is 50 Shades of Bronze. It's a solid palette, and I do really reach for it a lot on the everyday because I don't have to think about what I'm doing, and I appreciate that some days. So number 4 is a palette that I just utterly roasted when I did it, when I saw it on a new makeup releases, roasted it. And I remember I messaged my friend Karen and was like, what the hell is this? Why has she brought this out? This is ridiculous. I'm never gonna buy this. And then I saw it in person, and it's one of those palettes that you have to see in person to fully appreciate what this palette is, because when you see it in person you are completely and utterly mesmerized, and then it has honestly quickly become one of my all-time favorite palettes from her. Naturally, I am talking about the ND Glam face palette. Now I have the shade Light in this palette, and this is kind of, like it says, it's a face palette. So you get a cream blush and then the highlighter, which is more of a powdery highlight, and then you get 5 eyeshadows. Now when I saw this, I was like, this is the most basic thing I have ever seen. Seriously, she has come out with this before, what the hell is this? This isn't even gonna do it justice because I have used it and touched it. When you see this untouched, these sparkly shades right here and this highlighter looks like the prettiest diamond sparkly shadows you've ever seen in your entire life. I kid you not. It's just utterly mesmerizing, and they just translate like that onto the eyes. Look at this. If you kind of think Pat McGrath special shades almost, that's kind of what this is. Look at it. They are amazing. Even the highlighter is just, I mean, a highlighter's gonna swatch it's just never gonna do it justice in a swatch because it's designed to go on the lids, on the face so softly. But these like metallic shades, like even just look at them swatched there, they're so beautiful and sparkly and incredible, and I love them. I love them. And even the mattes in this palette, it performs like just the quality of the eyeshadows in this palette is so exceptional. Like it really just basically takes itself out of the eyeshadow pan and puts it on your eyes by itself. So you basically don't have to do anything at all. The cream blush in here is where this palette gets let down. I had to like scrape all like a top layer of my cream blush to even get it to be a cream blush. It was just bizarre, and I don't understand why she put this in here because I would have preferred a powder blush, if I'm honest, because this is just not it for me. But the rest of the palette is such high quality, it's just disappointing, but that's okay. Like the rest of it is so good, I'll get over it. The great thing about this is if you are someone that travels a lot, this is a great palette for you. If you are someone that again just doesn't want to think about how they do their eyeshadow because they pretty much wear neutral tones every single day, and you really want that neutral tone that's like not necessarily too cool tone, too warm tone, it's like right down the middle. You know you use a blush, you know you use a highlight, and it's just like this is all you would ever need, then go ahead and pick this up because it is such incredible quality, such incredible quality. I personally love using this. I've gotten so much more use out of it than I ever anticipated because it really is that kind of like, okay, I've got to go to work. I've only got 10 minutes to do my makeup. Let me quickly throw it on. I don't have to think about it again. I only have these shadows to choose from, and it's like crease, you know, deepen it up, pop it on, off I go. I look really well put together. It's just, it's honestly perfect for every occasion. Now she does have a dark version of this as well, so if you are a deeper skin tone or you just prefer that kind of like deeper shadows, then you can have a look at that option as well. I really recommend this to anyone that travels a lot, anyone that doesn't want to think about their makeup in the morning, or just if you are like, okay, but it's really pretty, then I just really recommend it. Number 3 is one that I have wanted for the second it came out, but again, it's one of the bigger ones. It's like 230 Australian dollars. I could not justify picking this up, and then I don't know, I just blacked out one day, and I think it was like 20% off during Black Friday sales last year or something, and I was like, that's it, I'm picking this damn palette up. So it is the Biba palette, which when you look at this, you just think, I don't need it, but you do. You do. I mean, I'm not telling you to go spend any money specifically, okay? I don't roll that way. You do you. Everyone's value of a dollar is different, but when I say you need this, you kind of do. Like it's, this palette, the top 3 especially, I find very hard to distinguish between them and pick. So really the top 3 are just my top 1, and if I could only have 3 palettes in my collection, honestly, I think the top 3 would be it. Pretty much, because they're all I could ever need. Now, this one in particular, I freaking love because it really has those more cooler tones, those warmer tones, and then also the cream to powder formula. It has enough metallics in here. It just really has everything you could ever need in an eyeshadow palette. Again, like, you know, I've got my neutrals for my everyday wear. I've got, you know, smoky kind of shadows if I want to create a smoky eye. I've got the metallics, like if I want a brown smoky eye, I can do that. If I want a gold one, if I want a more champagne one, if I want some like peachier tones, I've just got it all in here. Great wedding palette, great wedding palette. So is this one, by the way. I did mean to say that this one, great wedding. Great wedding palette. And the quality of this is where it is at. The quality of this palette is freaking mind-blowing. You know how Pat McGrath's specialty is her special shades? I always say that, like the reason why you get Pat McGrath mainly is because of her special shades. They're just mind-blowing. For Natasha Denona, it is her matte formula and her cream to powder in my opinion, but I know that's controversial. But her matte formula, oh Lord, that is where you buy Natasha Denona, because like I said, these eyeshadows, especially the mattes, they basically unpack themselves out of the pan and put themselves on your lid completely blended. That's basically what They do, and so they should for the price. We've got a little visitor. You want to say hello? Say hello. Hi, beautiful boy. I think if you are someone that wears just, again, like I've said this a few times, but if you're someone that really wears just neutral tones, but you do want that variety with like the black cream to powder, and the cool thing about that being a black cream to powder is that you can really create like winged liner with it, smudge out along the lash lines, like you can really create some dimensional looks with this one. Then I think that the Biba palette is for you, especially if you're someone that really just needs the one palette and it just needs to cover all of your bases and it's got to be neutral. Then I really would spend the exorbitant amount of money that you will spend purchasing this palette, because the quality is truly impeccable with this palette. Number 2 is Rephr. Again, love the packaging, has your little things on the back, all of that jazz. Rephr was also a palette that I pretty much roasted and was like, never picking that up. Nah, not for me, don't need these tones, blah, blah, blah. Why did I pick it up then, you say? Well, because I was never going to pick up the Glam palette from Natasha Denona either. And then I picked it up. Actually, I think I got it for a birthday present, but I was gonna buy it anyway. And I just adore that palette so much and use that palette so much that I thought, I bet you Rephr is the same, where you never think you're gonna use it, you think that you don't need it, you think that it's boring, but the quality is insanely impeccable and actually the tones are a lot more nuanced than what they look like in photos or pictures, etc. And I was 100% correct in that assumption, because the quality is just mind-blowing. Like, it's actually mind-blowing. And it has quite a few cream to powders in here, like this one here called Andy, and they're amazing. And this one here called Go-Go, and they're so good. And I love using these 2 shades as one and dones for work, because these kinds of tones suit me so well. And this whole palette, like the tones of this whole palette really suit me, and I wear them so often on the everyday that I don't know why I thought I wouldn't use this. And like the metallics in here are really quite unique. Like, look at these 3. Are they not gorgeous? Like, they are gorgeous. You can create the most stunning looks, and like it's even got like little bright pops of pink, etc. in here, where you can just create the most gorgeous looks. Some of my all-time favorite looks that I've ever created ever have been from this palette. Or this shade right here, Helio. Oh my lord. Oh, look at that. Look at Helio. Look at it. But seriously, look at Helio. That's insane. I love wearing Helio so much. I just really, really like this palette. I really like the mattes in here, the cream to powder, even this mod shade, which just looks like this boring kind of very pale pink matte, is exceptional and has its own place that I appreciate it for. And the only shadow that I would take out of this entire palette is this one right here. I just don't really use these purples. If you are someone that loves these kinds of tones and you wear these kind of tones a lot, then this is the palette for you. Don't even question it, go ahead and get it. You will not regret having this palette. So I feel like you know exactly which number 1 is, right? Like, you know what the number 1 palette is. It's Glam. And I did kind of, you know, go between this one and Rephr quite a lot, but I don't know. This one's just so versatile as well. I don't know, they're both number 1 really, but maybe I reach for this one just a smidge more, but also like the thing that I love about this one is it has all the neutrals you could ever want, and even to the point where it's like there's like a really cool tone crease one and a little bit of a smaller warm toned crease one. I mean, it's still cool tone, but you know what I mean. And then I love gun metals, like I love them, and these two are just incredible. And even like this one, oh, look at the dimension. And then like this one, look at them, look at them, look at them, look. Oh, I just love those shadows. And then I don't super love golds, but if I'm going to, it's going to be a cool tone gold. So I've got those in here. Also, because I love pinks, it has two pinks in here and they're more cool tony pinks. And that's just for me. And I love it. I love every single thing about this palette. Every single shadow. There is not one shadow in here that I would take out. I think every single one of these are incredible. They match the palette perfectly. I would wear every single one of these. I feel like you can see how much I've loved and used this palette. If you love cool tones, or you're thinking about dipping your toes into the cool tone water and you're trying to figure out which cool tone palette to go for, this is the one. This is the palette. This is it. It's crazy insane. And that is all of my Natasha Denona palettes ranked for you. Were they in the order you expected? I'd be curious to know. And if you have some Natasha Denona palettes, let me know what your order of ranking would be, or just what your favorite one is. Or if you don't have any, let me know which one is the one that you would pick up if someone said, okay, doesn't matter the price, just pick a palette. What would be the palette that you would pick up? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed this little Natasha Denona season of mine on the channel. We will have some other brand content moving forward now. We've gone through all of the Natasha Denona stuff that I wanted to do for now. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it all. Like I said, the playlist and everything will be down below for you. So if you're watching until this point, I appreciate you so much. Thank you, truly. Please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time. Bye.